All right, welcome back from great break. Hope everyone had a nice little chat and a good snack. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Hunter works at New York City Parks Environment and Planning Division as the landscape restoration crew leader for the Idlewild Park in Southeast Queens. He has been part of the Idlewild restoration crew for nearly 6 years, and their efforts include increasing biodiversity in the park while adhering to airspace regulations due to the location's proximity to flight paths for JFK Airport. Before his time with parks, Hunter held various landscaping jobs and earned a BS in environmental science from Mount St. Mary's University. Please welcome Hunter.
So thank you for having me today. I'm not usually the person to do these type of presentations, but Tim Wenskis from DEC, who was unable to make it, has graciously shared his slides for methods of managing porcelainberry. And then I have another presentation on managing mugwort. Um, so we'll start with porcelainberry. Ampelopsis brevipenunculata. It's a woody vine in the grape family. It was introduced in around the 1870s, used as an ornamental plant because of its beautiful blue and purple berries. Um, it has since gotten out of control. Here you see some reports, very concentrated in the city and Long Island area. Um, It really likes disturbed areas and forest edges. So you can see here how it's kind of spread along the I-95 corridor. Um, Driving along highways, you'll often see it covering large areas. I grew up in Baltimore where you can see it's just inundated and a lot of the area just looks like a huge vineland. So here's porcelainberry. It has these serrated grape leaves with 3 to 5 lobes, and uses tendrils, pretty large tendrils, to climb up trees. And it can grow up to 20 feet in a single season. Here you see a picture that's all new green growth from a single year. It's hardy to zone 4A, which is most of New York State, where it can survive. New York City parks have been treating since 1990, and have been fairly successful in many areas in treating the vines, but it is a task. So here's a Vineland. I'm sure many have seen this over and over again. It'll completely just cover out the ground cover and stop plants from growing through and climb up trees. And basically, if left unchecked and if left without intervention, it'll pretty much stay and just keep spreading. Like I said, it grows 20 feet. It has a lot of berries and is spread, dispersed by birds as well. Here's another photo just showing a vineland in City Park. And a recent addition, being from the same area in China, is host to the spotted lanternfly. You'll see them now covering, but they don't, of course, kill the vine, but you'll see the black sooty mold. They don't seem to like it as much as the ailanthus tree, but they will go after it. Abundant seed bank, yes. Porcelainberry will create a lot of seeds, and after initial removal of the large vines, you'll have to, years and years, can be at least multiple years of flushing out the seed bank and treating these small resprouts. These are very easy to get rid of. You can treat them with herbicide and they'll get and kill them that way, or you can remove them manually if it's a manageable area. So the purple flag shows a node, which is basically the main energy storage and like center of the porcelainberry vine. From there, you'll have both surface and underground roots that create a kind of network, and more nodes will sprout off from that and grow. So this shows kind of only the surface roots that are coming from this one porcelainberry node. Um, where the roots are smaller, sometimes you can dig them out by hand if you can get down and get most of the root out. Other times you have to just go through and cut below each node and treat. So traditionally, the way we manage it, first you go through and foliar spray the area. This will kill back the vine to the ground. It will kill smaller vines with smaller nodes, but larger, more established nodes and vines will resprout in the coming years. So it might look really nice and cleared, but they're just sleeping and they will return. So once you spray, you have to remove all this vegetation to be able to get down to the ground and to the nodes. This is what a resprout looks like. Once you see this green popping up, you know it's alive, and then you can go through, flag it, tag it, and treat it. So the treatment method that we've historically used is we go through and you have to very meticulously with the soil knife excavate around each root to get that center mass out of the node. And then you individually cut and treat each runner, each root with herbicide to kill each one. If you just try to cut stump above the node, it will be able to compartmentalize and it will not work and they will resprout. Here's another photo showing a main node to the right and then a little auxiliary node you can see to the left. So each of those, once it's excavated laboriously, you can remove, cut as low and flat as possible to the ground and treat with concentrated herbicide. We generally use triclipper in a squirt bottle and loppers to cut the vines. Of course, you need some personal protective equipment as well. So here is what it looks like after treatment. We dye our herbicide blue so we know where it is and where it's not. And here, this photo shows just how extensive and large these root networks can get. If you can see just how many nodes are only on this side, or how many roots are on this side of the node, it's a pretty painstaking process to go around each root by hand because you don't want to damage the plant before herbicide application. So to combat this, we've recently started using a pneumatic Airspade to help with the excavation process of the porcelainberry. So basically the Airspade is just highly compressed air with a tube with a trigger that you can basically just blow out all the soil around the node, and it really saves time going from like many minutes per node to a few seconds. So this is what the setup looks like. We purchased the Airspade attachment and we rent the compressor. Here you see a Vineland on the left side for treatment. So you need vehicle access, but we have a hose that reaches around 300 feet. So that, for our purposes, can reach most areas that we need to get to. As you can see, when you're using the Airspade, it's a good idea to be completely covered as much as possible because the soil will fly everywhere and get everywhere. We use these Tyvek suits, which do a great job. You definitely need a face mask, a visor, kind of some sort of shield, um, unless you like dust in your mouth. At least a mask and goggles. Um, so basically, the process is once you get it hooked up, to just go through, and then you just push the air into the ground around each node, and it's uncovered and ready to treat. So I have a short video clip just to show what that looks like, if it'll play. Well, you can just imagine the how much soil is blowing everywhere. Um, but this you in a Vineland with you can see all the little flags. Um, yeah, that's okay. Um, this can really help to be able to get through an area in a much more reasonable amount of time. So here's a picture of some excavated root nodes. Like I said, it's much easier with the Airspade to get around those roots for follow-up treatment. Um, air compressor, 100 cubic feet per minute, which is hard to wrap my head around. Um, and 90 psi, so it's a lot of very heavy air. It'll work in various soils. Where I work in Queens, there's a lot of very sandy soil. So it's very fine dust particles, and you want to try to protect yourself from that. It can be more difficult with heavier clay soils, but the Airspade can work through it. It didn't really work when ground was very frozen. It couldn't really get through the frozen ice. But for most purposes, it is definitely a big time saver if you're working in a large area. So I added this slide to show what happens if you expose the node and then don't treat it. So some roots may die, um, and it might look completely dead. The node itself will die, left over winter, it'll freeze, dry out. But if you dig underneath the soil, you can see there's some response growth, and there will be some resprouts and new nodes kind of created eventually. So it's worthwhile to do that extra step and treat each root. So the compressor, you'll see it all the time in construction sites, is used for various construction applications. Larger commercial arborists use the tool. They use it for root excavation to see problems underground in trees and for decompaction of soils around trees. So that kind of radial decompaction and trenching kind of gave us the idea that this would be very useful to use against porcelainberry as well. So the attachment costs around $1,500. The compressor, I remember not being that expensive for a rental. We usually would have it just a couple weeks a year when areas are ready and prepared. Hose typically loses pressure after 300 feet, but for most instances, this has more pressure than you will need. So that hasn't been a problem for us at all. So it's definitely worthwhile if you have a large area of porcelainberry to manage. Cool. Any questions, comments, porcelainberry? Yes. You can do it any time of year. Last year we did it in December. That's just when we could get the rental and we had time as the cruise. So we have been doing it in December, but then you have the problem of those nodes dying off to the ground, and then you'll have to re-excavate. So if you can get it earlier in the year, to the summer, and treat in the fall, that is probably the best way to do it. But we have had success with winter excavation and treating in the spring as well. But there is a balance where if it does kill the nodes, it can make things a little more difficult or make the treatment a little less work. Well, effective. Thank you. Yes. Um, Only limitations. Well, we did try it in some for other invasive species as well, just to see what would happen. Like we had just an area, I have that on the next slide, of mugwort, just to see if it could like just get all that soil away so you can just have roots and get rid of them. That it just broke apart the mugwort roots themselves, but most roots of woody plants will stay intact. Ooh, that could be because it seems pretty sturdy underground. We haven't tried it for bamboo, but I would assume that you could really get down to the roots. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, all the rest of the process is the same. You have to go through, spray it, remove all the vegetation, and then um no, not with this method. It just decreases the amount of time and work hours and your wrists. Yes.
Taking over a large area of their Francis Pond, teaching that.
Yeah, it grows very fast, and we've had some large areas in Idlewild Park where I am that we've completely cleared, and it's a shady canopy cover, so far there's been not too many resprouts, but they're definitely in the seed bank. So we'll have to keep managing them, like I said, year after year. Once you get rid of those nodes, you got to just respond to all the seed pressure for the next few years. That wasn't good.
Brought up the same methodology during the Chinese, so like why they take tree roots. Mostly just
Yeah, native, if they're intertwined with native tree roots, you just have to distinguish and know what roots are which. But it definitely helps to work around it because then you can just refill the soil after treatment. Um, we, you, yeah, climbing up tree roots, you would ideally remove the large vines that are climbing before going in with the airspace and treating.
they reach a certain size of climbing up the tree. Then after the same cut, they root die back. The younger ones will respond more aggressively.
Yeah.
So use the herbicide if it's up against the tree.
Um, yeah, generally it does depend on the soil type as well. If you have more organic and wetter soils, just getting that node out and keeping the rest of the roots underground might be enough to completely kill it off. Especially like the larger nodes, like you said, seem to be less able to respond. Um, but we still do use herbicide close to native, depending on the tree. Yeah, would skip it if it is like a really susceptible to herbicide damage. But in most cases, we do treat it just to like make sure that it's not coming back. Yes.
Well,
Idlewild Park is, well, I'll actually get that to the second slideshow here. It's in Southeast Queens, right next to JFK Airport. Oh. So we work in an area surrounding one of the largest intact marshes in Jamaica Bay and in the city. It's right across Rockaway Boulevard from JFK Airport. So it's in Springfield, Springfield Gardens area.
More try.
Okay, any more questions about Porcelainberry before we start on part 2? Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to mugwort management methods. Nice alliteration. In sunny landscapes. So I saw that in your fall partners meeting that the North Shore Land Alliance did a talk on mugwort management. So hopefully this can help add to the conversation and is not too repetitive. So I'll show you what we've been working on. So mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris, native to Eurasia and introduced in the 1600s, used medicinally and has spread through shipping and nursery stock. And is pretty naturalized and everywhere east of the Mississippi in the United States. Why is mugwort a problem? It has these aggressively growing rhizomes that kind of create a dense, decentralized network, and they really just crowd out the soil, they crowd out the space, and can just kind of really suffocate your native plants. Prefers full to partial sun, partially dry, disturbed areas, which is exactly what we have in Idlewild Park. So this is the park. Like I said, we manage around 50 acres of the upland area surrounding a salt marsh. We are contracted by the Port Authority because the runways go directly over our park. So we are contracted to maintain the airspace of the trees for safety regulations. So here you see the tree height limits that we have in the park. On the end close to the airport, you'll see it can only be 20 to 40 feet. And this is the main area that we're trying to work on mugwort management and establishing a grassland and shrubland. We've been working at the park for 10 years as NRG and Natural Areas Management. And we are currently negotiating another 10-year contract. So we'll be there for at least another 10 years. So in forest restoration in general, the basic workflow is find gaps in the canopy, because these gaps in the canopy will bring sunlight to the floor, which will cause rapid growth of all the aggressive sun-loving invasive plants. So you want to find those gaps and plant them, just manage that layer until you can get a nice canopy to shade out all the invasives. So if you think of it as forest succession, which we may all be familiar with, we want to usually in forest restoration go towards the climax forest, creating long-term canopy and eventually, hopefully, some old growth forests once again. But in Idlewild Park, because we cannot have these tall trees, we have to cut off succession before tall trees can grow. What this looks like in practice is this here. When we got to the park, this is maybe 2017. There are a lot of just ailanthus, black locust, mulberry, and cottonwood trees. So we removed all the invasive trees. We try to save all the native trees that we can and just prune them. Proactively prune them as much as possible. Pollarding, we've been trying to implement just to try to keep healthier trees that can stay smaller and out of the airspace. So once we got rid of all these trees, like I said, all that light gets to the ground, and what do you get? It looked like this. So the mugwort grows very aggressively, and you'll see this in no time if left unchecked. Here's an example of a planting we did back in 2021. These are a bunch of blueberry bushes that we planted, but as you can see, in between all of those bushes is mugwort. And if I would just say, if you have a site that looks like this, do not plant any woodies. It'll be very difficult to manage. You'll have to be there all the time to just keep uncovering your trees. I think there were more problems. This might not have been the right soil type for the blueberries, but eventually, if you're not careful, it'll all look like this. So yeah, none of those blueberries survived. I think it was the wrong place, but it was also that we did not properly remove all or as much of the mugwort as possible before planting. So we want our park to look like this. This is one grassland fragment that is currently in the park and has a nice diversity of grasses, bayberry, beach plum. You can see Virginia pine and pitch pine in the background, which we do have to manage a little bit for height. But basically, we're just trying to take this area and expand it to as much of the park as possible. So, how do we get there? Our options for management. What we have been doing, we've been either mowing, herbicide application. We've started some projects of smothering and solarizing, and pooling and grubbing. It's the other option. Like it says that you'll need more than one. You'll likely not be able to manage with only one of these, unless you have a very large area that you're able to mow low constantly, at least weekly, over time. So we'll start with mowing. It's the best place to start if you are in a new area with mugwort. It'll just help weaken the root system. The basic idea should be that you want to just keep mowing mugwort so that seeds cannot be produced and that it doesn't turn arborescent and woody, because then it's just harder to manage. And at that point, that means that energy is going back to the root system. So we want to weaken the roots as much as possible, which involves mowing as early as possible in order to help other plants be germinate and just to help stop from being overcrowded. Say repeated mugwort mowing, as I said, can control mugwort, but it can be time consuming and labor intensive. If you have any plants that you have planted or want to keep, it can be difficult to work around the area. Okay, so this is the equipment that we use. We have a large brush mower that can handle the dense woody stems of the mugwort. Hedge trimmers that can also be used when it's still very woody to help remove the mugwort, any thatch, because you'll see year upon year. I have a picture, but we have these tri-blade mowers. When they are green, you can use just a regular weed whacker, but we have these metal blade mowers that work really well for mugwort in tighter areas. And once you get it low and clear, it's possible to use a regular lawnmower, but only if it's already been managed with that primary mowing. So you want to mow in spring and summer, and what we do is spray in fall. That weakens the root system enough and is at a right time for the herbicide to be uptake by the mugwort. You can keep mowing late in the year to just keep those seed heads from reproducing. The mugwort will keep trying to grow and keep expending energy until it's freezing in December usually. Mowing works best when used in conjunction with herbicide. Like I said, mow in spring, spray in fall. If you don't want to use herbicide in your area, you have to just consistently mow, and just whenever it has leaves, basically, you want to just starve it out as much as possible. So a mower with a bagger can help remove mugwort thatch, allow natives to germinate. So mugwort, besides crowding out the soil, crowding out the area, it also changes the soil chemistry of the area. So, and also just layers and help stops other plants from germinating and growing chemically as well as physically. So using a mower with a bagger if you're able, or just removing those stems manually is a very important process. And then that also exposes the soil to be able to seed and to get early detection. Okay. Our next management option is herbicide. So it is like all these are not a one-shot deal. It'll take multiple year after year applications to be able to control the mugwort. The herbicides we have used is triclopyr and glyphosate. Recently, we've started using an herbicide called Milestone, which is aminopyralid, and it's much more long-lasting. It doesn't affect grasses, and we've been trying to use that to mostly establish grassland against the mugwort long-term. So the basic idea is the grasses just seem to be the best against defending the mugwort against encroachment because of just how much physical area and how dense of an area they take up. It just physically crowds out the mugwort from re-encroaching. So what we're trying to do, just like that path of succession, is trying to build the herbaceous layer before we try to plant any woody shrubs or other other plants. It is a long-lasting herbicide that affects dicots much more than monocots. So it will affect the mugwort and other herbaceous plants, but not affect the grasses. So this is why we're using it to try to establish grass and hopefully keep out the mugwort. Some plants are a lot more sensitive than others. Pea and rose family plants are particularly sensitive. We've been having a lot of success using Milestone for cut stump treatment of black locust. Black locust historically has been a real pain to try to manage with the resprouts, but with the Milestone, the resprouts are very minimal to none, which is a dream come true. It's an auxin receptor inhibitor, so it stops the plant meristems from growing, which will eventually starve and kill out the plant. Here's just a visual of the equipment that we use. You can use a rig or backpack sprayers. You need mixing station, personal protective equipment. Here are some pictures of the main site that we are trying to establish grassland. You can see this one mugwort patch here. was very tall. So we have to mow the area first in the spring. In the summer, I think we mowed it 2 or 3 times this year, at least 3, before applying the milestone. So the existing grassland is kind of behind this area to the left, and we're just slowly trying to push out through this large mugwort field. So once it's mowed and is at the right height of a foot or two, then you can spray. I think we sprayed it earlier in the year this time, around in May. Because it's long lasting, there haven't been many resprouts since then. As you can see, this green patch on the left is all pokeweed. This was treated also the year before, and half of it took really well. It was treated by our contractors, and half took really well, and half did not, and the mugwort came back. So this is just kind of a retreatment. Over the winter, we seeded the whole area with a grass seed mix. And then this is what the site looked like in September. You don't see much mugwort at all. You see a lot of these evening primrose popped up, and a lot of our purple love grass started to germinate. We haven't seen too much germination of the other grasses we seeded, but I think if just continuing to keep the space clear, they'll hopefully in the next few years keep germinating and fill in the space. So here's just an example of the workflow to try to establish a grassland. So first we started by mowing the mugwort. Remove any woodies, just kind of clear the space to make it easier to work in. You of course keep any trees that are existing or shrubs that you do want, but any invasive trees and vines we removed. There was a lot of porcelainberry also in this area. They were much smaller nodes, and we just dug them out by hand and haven't seen too many resprouts. So after this, we spray the mugwort in the fall. That's when it can best uptake the chemicals. And then in the winter, we removed all that mugwort thatch and seeded with a grass mix. And then just the next few years, you want to keep up with any resprouts and just try to get those seeds to germinate, reseed if you need. This upcoming spring, we're planting around 10,000 grass plugs in the area. And hopefully those should be volunteer events in the spring. If any of you look on the stewardship page for the New York City Parks, you may be able to find some planting events to come help out in the spring. Some things to consider when using Milestone is that it persists in the soil for a very long time. And the label says not to plant until at least 18 months after treatment. So this can complicate things, but if you do want to plant and are getting re-encroachment, you can just switch to just a soil inactive herbicide to follow up until you're planting if you're not within that buffer. Also, because it does move around in the soil, you have to be careful of using it around trees. If you're using it under tree canopy, it will make its way to the roots and be uptaked, and you will see this kind of cupping of leaves that you see here, and like a wonky kind of squiggle of the most recent branches. So like I said, some plants are more susceptible than others. You can use it underneath. We've sprayed mugwort just underneath black locust trees and killed the locust trees just from treating the mugwort. So you got to be really careful. The picture on the bottom is a holly that I sprayed too close to, and you will see this cupping. But I will say that every time we've seen this happen, there was another area where I sprayed very mixed with goldenrod, and The goldenrod all looked kind of like this plant at the top. And I thought I killed them all and I was very upset, but they have since bounced back and the mugwort has not. So it's looking a lot better. So don't be too discouraged if you if you do use this route, if you do see this, but it's very unsightly and it can also have pre-emergent properties for certain seeds. So just be aware of that if you do seed, especially dicot herbaceous mix, it can stop the germination, but doesn't seem to have stopped germination of grass seeds. We've had a lot of success in Ecology Park in Patagat Basin, just repeatedly treating mugwort that has been seeded in the past, like 7 years ago. And it was all mugwort, and then just keeping treating, those grasses came in, and now it looks, I wish I had photos of that site too. And the use rates are very low. We only use about 0.1% application for the mugwort in the areas where we're using, which is much lower than most other conventional herbicides. And for the black locust, we use 5 to 10%, and that is enough for cut stump application. So some additional techniques, like I said, as trees are very sensitive to the aminopyralid, it's a good idea to spray buffers or around trees and shrubs and any other sensitive plants that you might have using any soil inactive herbicide. So this is a picture of just a lawn, but you can see this kind of idea in place. Noting that glyphosate also will kill the grasses. So you got to balance. You can use a tricloper in some areas, which would not affect the grasses, but does have a little bit more soil movement. Once you get to the most of the mugwort here, the bottom picture shows a planting site that was mostly mugwort and is very successful. But there is still mugwort in there. That last little few percent is very hard to get to. So we've just started for those very small areas that were like 99% there, because once you leave that 1%, it'll come back very quickly. Where we don't want to disturb all the plants that it's mixed in with, we've gone through and just cut and dab each individual stem. Of course, it's only good for very small areas, but it's very important for areas that you've worked so hard on not to just have it become mugwort once again. It's also good to note dense shrub plantings like the photo of the blueberries that I showed you can be very hard to navigate and maintain over time. So just telling again that the basic strategy is to transform that herbaceous layer before planting woodies. Okay. Our next technique is smothering. We started some projects last year of some mugwort smothering in areas that are pretty much all just mugwort stands. We use a 6mm tarp or similar tarp. Cardboard's also another option. We've done some test plots on, and it seems to be working pretty well. Before tarping on this, we actually took out some native plants that were there and transferred them to another area and replanted them, and they're doing great. And we're able to smother out the mugwort while keeping them alive and happy. Also tilling. If you're able to, tilling can break up the soil and kind of that network of roots before smothering and just kind of make it a quicker, more easy process. And it's also gentler on the tarp so that you don't have all these little stems poking up. You can till it and be a nice soft soil and then tarp that. And we did find that that seemed to be more effective than areas where we did not till, which was just because there's too much debris in our soil and we kept breaking the tiller. So here's a visual of equipment you might need. You can use the 6 mm tarp or cardboard. We've used sandbags or just found items such as tires, logs, anything that won't poke through. This is tarp tape on the top left side. The tarp will get holes in it and you will need to repair them. So a nice heavy duty tape. This is specifically made for a tarp like this. And a rake. What is the rake for? Oh, yes. So when you get to an area of mugwort, it might look like this. Like I said, year after year, creates this just thatched network that nothing can get through. So the first order of business is to get rid of this. You want to clear that out manually. If you're able to prescribe burn, we can't in the city, but if you're able to, that could be a good option for removing all this because it is, we've recently implemented it, just removing all the mugwort stems to be kind of our protocol. And I think it's one of the biggest changes that have made the biggest impact in transforming the area. So once you get that out of there, you want to mow low all the way to the ground. You can see here we went through and had a lot of resprouts. You can see in the back of this photo too, of invasive trees, mulberry and ailanthus mostly. And so we went through and treated those with a cut stump application. We removed the mugwort thatch from the site. It's basically piled in a few different areas throughout the park now. We used a leaf blower to kind of expose the soil. We do want to seed after this as well. So just kind of blank slate, clear everything that you can. Then you roll out the tarp, hold down the edges with sandbags, pretty straightforward. Last year we didn't get to the tarping until July. So ideally you would do it later in the season. I'd say before the mugwort starts growing in the spring, if you can tarp it and just leave it all season, that should be great. And then you can take it off in the winter, seed, and then just keep up with any resprouts. Greatly reduces any herbicide that you have to use. We've really been trying to limit our chemical inputs wherever possible, and this has been a good use if you have a big cleared area. So this is this year's tarp. In the foreground, we have an area that we tarped last season from July until winter. You can see some resprouts coming up, but it's fairly clear, and you can see some Phragmites has started to encroach. So once you get the area clear from all that mugwort, it kind of provides a empty space where anything can kind of come join the party. So this Phragmites now has spread a lot quicker throughout the area, and now we're working on keeping that at bay along with any mugwort resprouts. So this year's tarp in the back, we were able to get to early in the spring, and it's still there now. It's holding great. There have been a few little sprouts that you might be able to see coming up through the tarp, but we just went and cut and dabbed those with herbicide, as well as this mulberry tree that we didn't get in the middle, but that's now gone as well too. Another option for tarping or for smothering is cardboard. It's a nice cheap option. You can go dumpster dive, go take the recycling and use it however you need. You just want to overlap the layers, make sure it's completely blocked out from sunlight to just starve out those mugwort roots. You can weigh down with logs, like I said, any found objects, debris, mulch. We've used the mugwort stems themselves on top of the cardboard just to hold it down. And then you just remove it after you're done with the tarping process. This little test plot we've had there for 2 years now. There's been minimal resprouts, and we're going to seed and also plant in the spring. Seed in the winter, plant in the spring. You want to remove any tape and just be aware of any dyes that you might be introducing to your soil. Try to just keep the brownest tape free. There are like adhesives in there, but you don't let the cardboard break down all the way. You will remove it again, but just something to be aware of. And I've seen wood chip sheet mulch as a method, which we do not use in Idlewild, partially because, well, the plastic and cardboard seems to work better, but also that we want to keep our soil low nutrient, just to try to restrict that growth of larger, fast-growing, tall trees and kind of help halt the successional path. Very similar, solarizing. It is pretty much the same as the smothering, except you use a clear tarp and you'll trench out the edges, and it gets a lot higher temperatures, which will kill the seed bank as well as the roots. The smothering will kill the roots that are underneath, but in those areas we had previously seeded and we did not want to kill those seeds. But in areas where the seed bank is probably pretty invasive, solarizing could be a good method if it's sunny. So greenhouse effect, you just trap the so we trenched out the area after clearing it, wet the area to get it nice and just steamy and help rot the roots, and then covered it with the tarp and sandbags. It, in theory, shouldn't take as long because of the higher temperatures, but you can still just leave it for a whole season and then follow up with it the next year. That's what our little solarizing test looked like. And this is afterwards. You can see all the mugwort right on to the edge of the tarp, and then not much in the rectangle. You can see where each black sandbag was placed. There was a little yellow mugwort still alive, still trying. So it'll take like any little space that it can, it'll find, and it'll survive. So it's not 100%, even if just because there's a sandbag, it didn't get hot enough. But it just kind of goes to show how quickly these the mugwort can return. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So one more method that we use is grubbing. So this is another chemical-free way to just initially reduce the biomass of mugwort. I'll say pooling mugwort. Each time you pull a mugwort stem, the roots will break. They're very delicate. And each fragment of rhizome will resprout. So if you just pull the mugwort, you can eventually just be left with a lot more stems than you started with. So if you do want to get down and remove the roots and rhizomes, you need to try to dig out as much as you can as possible. Because yeah, each small fragment will resprout. So these are some of the tools we use. If you have an area, a larger area, using a flat spade, shovel, and pitchfork might be the best way to go. You want to kind of grid out an area, and a trench grid out an area with the shovel, and then just lift up and kind of use the pitchfork to tussle out the roots, and that can help to just kind of get the soil, and then you just go through and just find any existing rhizomes and remove them as well. It can be a difficult process. It's good to have containers around because when you are digging up the roots, the soil will go on top of the neighboring mugwort and it'll look clear, but that's just because you've put more soil under things that are there. So you just really have to be, it's a very time consuming process and you have to be very diligent with all the areas that you remove. So using a container to hold the soil itself is a good idea, and then just sift out the roots, put those in a pile, and then once you see that it's all cleared, you can re-add the soil to your area. So this is only really feasible in fairly small areas if you have a lot of people power. So here's the little test with the Airspade that we did that I was talking about earlier. This just kind of shows what the mugwort roots might look like underground in a mugwort area. If you see to the top left of the hose here, that's kind of what the root and rhizome system looks like. So just trying to get all of that out as possible. With the first foot of soil will be just completely, just look like spaghetti and just be completely mugwort, and the roots can go a few feet down. So you might not get to all of it, but you just need to be able to follow up with the site. Like all the methods, this is not a one and done. I have had success in kind of taking out an area and just starting from one end of the mugwort and kind of rolling it like a carpet. And then you can just kind of keep rolling the whole mugwort mat out. But it's pretty site dependent and soil dependent as well. It's a lot easier in the sandy soils to grow because you can just run your fingers right through the sand instead of denser soil where it might be, I'd just say not advisable to try to grub. So here's one area that we wanted to plant herbs in the spring, and there was mugwort that retook over the area. So luckily, we have the only full-time restoration crew dedicated to a single park because of our grant with the Port Authority. So in our division, we're the only full-time restoration crew dedicated to a single park. So we were able to have the man hours to just try these kinds of things. So we went through in the winter, grubbed it all out and planted in spring. And this was at least 2 years ago. And this is what it looks like now. We've kept this as an herbicide-free kind of test area. We've only gone back and mowed after the initial grubbing. It definitely greatly reduced just the biomass of the mugwort underground and took a lot of that root system out. Like I said, there will be resprouts. You will need to follow up, but we've seen with enough hands that an area can be pretty well transformed in a short amount of time for grubbing. So this is another site where we had a successful planting of bare root prairie willow. It was our first time planting the prairie willow and first time planting a bare root plant in the park. And we, in the winter, just went through, found a good area for the willows and decided to go through as a team and grub it. I'd say it's maybe 100 square feet and maybe took a crew of 3, a few days at least, up to a week to like adequately flush out all the roots and follow up with some resprouts. So yeah, after the initial grubbing, we did wait to see new leaves come up and we followed those and removed them as well. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. So downsides, it's very time expensive, best for small areas. And if it's not um, followed up with, it can result in an increase of stems if you're not thorough. The soil disturbance can provide a good opportunity for seeding. And that's pretty much what I got for grubbing. All right, in summary, mugwort will not be easily controlled by a single method or any single treatment. So integrated management using as many methods as possible is your best option. Definitely these removal methods in conjunction with seeding, planting, and burning if you're able to do prescribed burning. And it's definitely site specific. Like I said, if you're trying to get trees to grow, you might just have to mow and just let those trees create a canopy and shade them out themselves. In our case, we can't do that. So it can take years and years of treatment to let those native herbs establish in sunny areas. And then much more occasional maintenance after that. All right, thank you.
Note that our next meeting will be all virtual, so you can enjoy Zooming in with us from home on February 24th. And also remember to save the date for our Resilient Long Island Symposium, which will be a little bit after that. Also, it's a Tuesday, not a Friday, for scheduling reasons. So save the date and join us on Zoom all together. And thank you so much.